CNBC.
Johnson's getting ready to back in now. You fellas on the lawn there, you want to come over here on the driveway where you'll be safe? Oh, there he comes. See, he got the mailbox that time. There goes the picket fence. Now the hedge. On the green in 3.
Here making his first appearance with us is the mind of Bob Newhart, which has been buttoned down and so much more for many years. Robert, thanks for coming on. Welcome. When you see this now, this was done back in the 60s.
That was 61.
Yeah, boy, you have been performing for many, many decades, have you not, sir?
It started in 1960 with the record album. Until 94.
94.
So far.
That's so far so good.
I'm still fooling them. So
no, you're not fooling them. But you caught on very, very fast. Like you said, you started in 1960, and by 1961, your album was #1, and everybody got your humor so fast.
Well, I actually, in 1959, I was working for doing a Man on the Street show, WBKB in Chicago. That no one watched. I mean, that people we try to interview them and they'd push us out of the way because we were against the Today Show and Captain Kangaroo. That show lasted 16 weeks, and I would be a different person, make-believe person every week, every day.
And you'd go out on the street.
Go out on the street. Well, I'd be interviewed and well, Tom Racine was, I don't know if you remember Tom.
Surely, I knew Tom very well. He worked in Milwaukee when I was a boy at the station there and then moved down to Chicago.
That's right.
And his son Chuck went on to great success with the New York Giants football team. Yeah.
So Tom interviewed me one time, and I was coming out the subway, and he said, may I ask what you do? And I said, yes, I'm a doctor. And he said, well, what are you doing up this early? I said, well, I had an emergency appendectomy last night. Got the call around 10:30, and we ran into some complications. And I just finished about half an hour ago. I sewed up the patient. I'm sure I sewed up the patient, and then ran back into the subway. We got one card in 16 weeks.
Oh, gee.
I don't think the signal went out of the building. But I was playing golf every day. I thought I died and gone to heaven.
And what were they paying you? $200-300 a week to do this?
$300 a week, yeah.
And it's 16 weeks later, it goes off the air, and what happens?
Well, then I was on staff for a while. They had me on as a bongo player because they didn't want to pay me as talent, so they had me as a bongo player. And that lasted about half a year, I guess I was there.
You know, in that time that you were in Chicago, growing up in the business, and before that working in the accounting office, Chicago was big in television. There was an era in Chicago television when Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, and Breakfast Club, and you remember all kinds of...
Studs Sterkel.
Sure.
Yeah.
Howard Miller came out of Chicago and on NBC in the afternoon.
That was 59, and then I made the record album in February of 60, and then all of a sudden I was getting calls from the Gary Moore show and Jack Parr show, and I was, what happened? You know, I mean, it just, overnight, the album just kicked everything off.
Yeah, but what was it about that, if you can analyze it, and maybe you can't analyze great comedy in any more than you can analyze great music or great art, because it stands by itself, but you caught on just like that. I remember seeing you on the Playboy, Playboy After Dark with Hefner, and your stuff cut through and still cuts through all the age groups, Bob.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I feel as if I almost,
I'll tell you what happened, and it wasn't planned, but Mike and Elaine and Shelley and myself, we all came out of Chicago at that time. And it was a style that, it was a stylized comedy that you couldn't steal. I mean, prior to that, you could steal Take My Wife, Please.
Sure.
I'll Get the Half That Eats, all those jokes. Burn a hole in the coat, that's another one. So, but if you did like one of mine or one of Shelley's or one of Mike and Elaine's, people would say, no, that's
Newhart's.
That's Newhart's or Mike and Elaine's or Shelley's.
Yeah, that's right. Your material.
But it wasn't, I wish I could take credit for it. It wasn't my intention. It just became very stylized and personal.
And now when you go out, are you able to work the same way? You'll be in the Cape Cod area like the end of this month, the 30th and 31st, and I will plug these when I get the glasses cleaned. I can't see right now. Thank you. Jeez, don't drop the glasses, for heaven's sake. What's the matter with you? Is it the same now as it was then in terms of your material, or has laugh-in and comedy on television and everything changed what audiences expect from a comedian?
Laugh-in changed comedy forever.
Yeah.
It really, it wasn't so much the attention span, it's just it created and then MTV, of course, with Bang, 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 quick cuts and that kind of thing. And you could sense it in comedy. You could sense it that you couldn't do the long routines. You couldn't do the 6-7 minute routines anymore. People's attention span would just drift. You could see it in their eyes in the front row. You know, just kind of like that.
Blaze over.
Blaze over. So you had to adapt to it. So I still do one or two of the old routines, like you mentioned, Sir Walter Raleigh.
Do you do?
Or driving a trucker.
I told Bob, you know, the first time I quit smoking 20 years ago, I went to a commercial thing in L.A. and they played your routine of Sir Walter Raleigh phoning the colonies, or phoning England that you've discovered tobacco. Yeah.
Well, you know what that is? We mentioned, we talked at the club, and I mentioned this book I had just read, Donna Williams, who I think you're going to have on, this autistic lady. And I was very moved by the book. It was an extraordinary life that she's led. And the more I read it, because she talked about their world and our world, and how they were making us live in their world, and we wanted to stay in our world. And it struck me it was very similar to what comedians do, that we kind of look at your world and say, don't you realize how really strange your world is?
Yeah,
that's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
So we're kind of autistic, I guess, because, you know.
I saw a comedy special, actually a documentary that Playboy had done on censorship in America, where they used a young comic named Jerry Tingle, or Jack Tingle. And he was terribly funny, and at the end, you know, he did the knock-knock joke. He says, you know, knock, knock, who's there? Rita. He said, read a paper and find out what I'm talking about, folks. You know, like he used the line, he said, in Florida, you know, they had, you know, 48 murders by guns in the last month, but they're closing down the record stores for selling records that have bad lyrics. He says, maybe we ought to take a look at our priorities, and he was very, very funny about it. Let me ask you here about, and we've talked about this in private, and you know what's coming, and I love to talk about this guy. Introduce this audience to Monsieur Le Pétomé.
My wife and I were in Paris. I remember it was 25 years ago. I did a movie with Peter Ustinov in London, and we had some time off, and we went to Paris. First time ever in Paris. And picked up the international edition of Time magazine, and I turned to the book section, and there was this review of a book called Le Pétomé, a gentleman in France who made a rather enormous amount of money, as you mentioned earlier, passing gas. That was his specialty. At one time received more than Sarah Bernhardt. Only was successful in France. Went to Germany and they booed him off the stage and threw things at him. But what he would do is he would emit sounds.
Yes, right. He would play the Marseillaise.
A drum, a tom-tom, or cannons going off.
Yeah.
And he appeared at this club, and they paid him a huge amount of money.
And he was a hit, right?
Oh, yeah. And he fell in love with this girl, and her father had a flower stall in Montmartre or wherever, and he was doing free shows there for the girls to attract the crowd. Hard to believe it would attract the crowd. You would think it would do the exact opposite. But the guy got an injunction to prevent him from putting on these free shows in Montmartre.
Yeah. Well, you could tucker yourself out after a while.
I saw it as a wonderful commentary on fame, because I'm sure at some point he was going to be asked, do you think Mitterrand is doing a good job, or should we? Now, why would this man's peculiar talent have anything to do with his preference? So I thought it could be a wonderful...
Excuse me, sir, we know you make your living by farting music. What do you think the president's doing in terms of art? It's crazy.
Well, they asked me, you know, do you think Clinton's doing a good job? What does it matter what I think? I'm no authority on anything.
And I'm told... in fact, I think it was by you or another one of our mutual friends that Pétomé's closing act was that he sat in the tub of water and emptied it. Is that true?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Right. No small feat.
Yeah, right. And from what I'm told, a very fast. Good night, everybody. Drive safely on the way home. You know? I'm out of here. Yeah.
the Petamine has left the building.
We will continue with some of you on the toll-free line
There's
after
kind of a
these
theme
messages.
show, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a bad.
This is CNBC.
The South, it's very interesting because they like start out yelling, and then they like run out, the batteries give out or something. I don't know. It's like, well, no, forward there, grin on all over, real don't know how to doesn't know to have them.
You know, it'd be kind of nice if we would say where that's from, you know, put a little print below it and say, you know, Bob Newhart appears. Nothing. No courtesy, no respect. Veteran performer, Zippo. Mr. Newhart will be in the Boston area on July 30th at South Shore Music Circus, and then Cape Cod's Melody Tent on July 31st, and I sure hope it isn't real hot when you get. They have no air conditioning there.
No, it's a tent. It's a...
Yeah. And are you a spritzer? Like, do you perspire easily?
Not as bad as Rickles.
No, Rickles sweats a lot, doesn't
Rickles sweats. He sells his sweat, actually, at the end of his... He doesn't have T-shirts. He sells it at the end of a performance. No, I'm not really. I mean, I do, but no one's aware of it.
Not that it's ever gone badly for you when you've been on stage.
Oh, please.
But do you get the, you know, what we call
sure.
the flop sweat? Why do we get that? What causes that? It's always right here.
Because you never know. You know, I mean, I made the record album in 1960. Before it came out, I played at Windsor, Ontario, Canada.
You okay?
Yeah, died every night. Just went out and they stared, sometimes would look up at me, but a lot of times they just continue eating. And no matter how well the show went the night before, it doesn't mean anything. You've got to do it again. And
yeah.
is this going to be Windsor, Ontario, Canada again, you know?
And in Windsor, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that funny? It's just, I see
I mean,
people,
I've been doing it 35 years. There's an adrenaline rush.
Of course there is.
I don't think you're supposed to get used to it.
No,
you know?
I never do, ever, not ever. Here's Kathy on the phone from Crystal Lake, Illinois. Hi, Kathy, it's Tom. How are you?
Hi, Tom.
How you doing?
You know what? My husband says to me, why are you staying up after 9 o'clock at night? And I keep saying to him, Tom, Rich, get a break. Give me a break.
Wait a second, hold it. What is your husband's name again, dear?
Rich.
What is it? I mean, does Rich have to have you in the bedroom by 9 o'clock at night? Is that bedtime at your house?
No, he just has to be there. Doesn't necessarily mean I have to be there.
Ah. Does he get up early in the morning?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So then he needs to get to bed.
Yes.
It's not that he's eager.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, say hi to Bob. He's right here, Kathy.
Robert, I love you tremendously. In fact, Richard and I were talking about, we just saw last night on... we saw the last 3 episodes of the Cheers thing, their last episodes.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about the best episodes ever. And he said MASH was good. And I said, you know what? I think Bob Newhart was the best. Unfortunately, something was leaked out to the press before that. But it still was great. I loved when Suzanne Plachette and you woke up in the bed. That was so terrific.
That was my wife's idea. That was Jenny's idea.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it?
It was the 7th year of the show, and I was kind of unhappy with CBS because they were moving us around, and
I've read that.
yeah, and try to find Bob this week. And so I said to Jenny, I said, honey, I think this is the last year. And we were at a party, and Susie was there, and she said, if it's your last show, you should do it. You should wake up in bed with Susie, and the whole thing was a dream. And I said, that's a great idea.
It's a fabulous idea.
And we put on a phony ending so that the tabloids wouldn't get a whole... We had a whole scene in there that we never intended to shoot where I get hit with a golf ball and go up to heaven, and George Burns is God, and he talks to me.
Yeah.
We never intended to do
which,
that.
by the way, would have been just fine all by itself, fine any.
But there'd been... we were one of the few shows that could refer to another show, and the reaction was incredible that we got to it. It was just incredible.
It sure was. It was a great show. Kathy, I'm glad you called. Yes,
Tom,
ma'am.
by the way, I don't want you to send me anything.
Well, you're getting a mug whether you like it or not.
A mug?
Whether you like it or not, we're going to send you a
Well,
coffee.
thank you so much.
You're
Bless your heart.
very, very welcome. Put Kathy on hold, get her address, and then let her get to bed, for God's sake. Kathy, thanks for calling. All right. Bye-bye, Tom. Thanks, Kathy. Bernie, somewhere in California. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Ball's in your court, Bernie. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I say sure can.
I'd like to ask Bob about his golf game.
He's a very fine golfer.
I know Tom was a 5 handicap. He says it is best, but I thought it was 5.
6.
What was your lowest, Bob?
Never got that far. Never
You were
got
9, weren't you? 8 or 9?
Now, the important question about golf, did you ever, you can do something that's straight and it's funny. Did you ever do a routine on one of your fellow competitors just to get him to miss a putt or something?
Oh, there's nothing funny about golf. I can find no humor, and if you think I can't, Jim Garner can find none at all.
You know, Jim Murray, who writes for the LA Times, once described golf as the pursuit of infinity. And when you think about it, that's a very, very good definition.
Well, the perfect score is 18.
Well, not if the ball bounces. It could be a 17. You know, if it hits the bottom of the cup and then bounces all the way, you know, and that's why even the pros, and I know that people who don't play golf find conversations about golf endlessly fascinating. Yeah, go ahead, Bernie.
The greatest routine that Bob ever did was the one where he was teaching bus driver's school.
Excellent routine.
Way back.
Yep. Bernie, I'm out of time, but I thank you for calling tonight.
Thank you, Bernie.
Okay. Listen, there's a gal named Ellie at Fonstock in Carmel that just loves you and would love to have a mug.
You tell Ellie to send me a little note with her address, and we'll take it under consideration, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. See, they're onto the mugs now.
Oh, I see.
And then last night, they found out we had an extra clock downstairs. We shipped that today. We're basically, you know, since...
So you're saying it's not me?
No, not you at all. It's just that since the QVC thing fell through at CBS, they're coming here now. Anyway, I thank you for coming on tonight. I've wanted this to happen for a long time, and I hope that you'll consider coming back at some future date.
I would love to. The time went by so fast.
Yes, it did. You'd be surprised how quickly it can go here some nights. Bob Newhart in the New England area, the end of July. Check the newspapers for the exact venue. Back with more after these messages.